This is Upping Your Game, the podcast where experts share the strategies with you, your team, or your organization in how to thrive in today's fast-paced and ever-changing world. I'm Stephen Krempl, and I'm your host. Today, for this episode, we have a special guest joining us. Vellu Mahadevan is the country HR director based in Penang, Malaysia for Micron Technology. Vellu is a seasoned human resource professional with over 20 years of experience in multinational environments. His expertise spans across coaching and consulting with business leaders and the workforce at all levels in talent management, engagement, workforce planning, organizational development, and leadership development. Vellu, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Stephen. It's a pleasure being here.
That's right. Hey, let's get straight into it. I have a couple of questions for you today. The first one is really around, adopting or adapting to change, right? Change is happening by the minute, so to speak, nowadays. So in the world of rapid technological advancements, what personal habits or strategies have either helped you or people you've seen stay ahead and remain relevant?
Okay. Thanks for that, Stephen. I think the main thing, I don't know if it's called a habit or just a behavior. It's about being curious. I'm naturally a curious person, so the desire to know, about things, the desire to know what's next, the desire to know if there's something new that's up and coming or has already been there. The desire to know what is that and how do I apply it to whatever I do. And I think that's one of the key things that has really helped me. And I see that in a lot of leaders or people that have been able to adapt to change very quickly as well. And I think the second piece is about acknowledging the need to change. One of the things that I feel that's important is to really acknowledge that change is needed. And many of us, I struggle with that. That's probably one of the biggest things most of us struggle with is acknowledging that change needs to happen. We are creatures of habit, and therefore recognizing that change is needed and acknowledging it and taking initiative to make that change is truly not an easy thing to do, or not even, perhaps for most of us, it's not even a natural thing to do, right?
That's
so
right.
Acknowledging that the change. Sorry?
Yeah, it's really funny, because, you've been working for a long time. I've definitely worked for a long time. And it seems I don't care whether it's the 80s, 90s, 2000s, or even these days, change is always there, right? It's always happening, but somehow people always have this resistance to change. And I think your idea of acknowledging that change is needed at any point in your career is really, really important one, though. And have you seen a lot of people who I am assuming, right? Most people at senior levels all acknowledge this and are ready for change, or?
I think it's a yes and no. I believe it depends on situations. There are some they've gotten where they are, especially at the senior level, based on certain behaviors and habits that and have gotten them successful in their own terms. And many times, I believe a lot of people refuse to change or are not willing to change or don't acknowledge the need to change because they have been successful the way they are.
Yep.
Right. So the question always arises, why do you need to change if it's worked before?
Exactly.
But obviously things are changing, the environment is changing, new generations come with new behaviors, new habits, you need to learn how to lead and manage differently. So the acknowledgement of change needs to be there, and followed by, of course, understanding what needs to change. Right.
Okay,
you don't
very
have to
good.
change everything.
I love that. I think the two words you mentioned, which is really, really important for everybody who's listening, one is curiosity, and then the other one is just acknowledgement, right? Acknowledge things are happening, and then be curious to find out how you can adapt to that change or get ahead of that change or embrace the change, right? So very good. So to lead to this is, because everybody wants to have a competitive edge, right? So what do you think separates those who thrive in today's fast-changing world and for those who are really struggling to keep up, though?
I think, the first question, it probably answers this, right? It's adaptability. what I notice is, it's a fast changing environment. There are people who have met, who have worked with, who adapt a lot faster. They
Mm,
adapt so quickly, and part of that, as I mentioned, was about being curious, acknowledging change is needed, understanding what needs to change. But I also believe that in terms of adapting, there's a lot of things we need to unlearn. We
mm,
always talk about learning, but I
yeah,
think there's a lot of things that we need to unlearn. And that comes, of course, with acknowledging that change is needed, doing a lot of
sure.
self-reflection. So unlearning what we've done before, what we've done in the past, how we have done certain things, and acknowledging that, it may not be working. So how do we unlearn some of those habits, behaviors, and of course, learning new ones. And I think there's no shortage of um, opportunities to learn these days. There's a lot of material available, and so on. So of course, learning is a big part of it.
Yeah, and I
Um,
think this even happens even at the individual and even at a team level, don't you think?
yes, yes, for sure. I think we need to learn individually and as a team, and we also need to unlearn certain behaviors and
Yeah.
habits as an individual and as a team as well. Yeah. And I think one of the other things I would say, in having a competitive edge, Stefan, and here at Micron we have this value called tenacity, and I think that's so important. A lot of people who have been able to adapt to change and move forward, overcome some of the challenges that these changes bring, people who have been very tenacious with, wanting to pursue improvement, the desire to do
Mm,
better, to achieve their goals using different means. Especially now with the advent of AI, a friend of mine, who's a senior leader, he often, when I met him a few weeks ago, he was telling me that every day he makes sure he uses an AI tool, and he uses that to practice. He spends about half an hour, 1 hour or so. And I've embraced that as well now. So I think just acknowledging that change needs to happen and embracing whatever tools or putting technology to your advantage, I think is also important.
yeah, yeah, that's brilliant though. I think you're too acknowledging the change from the first question, and then this whole notion of unlearning though. And then once you unlearn, you have to have the tenacity to try and improve and learn something new so that you
Yeah.
kind of stay ahead though, right?
Yeah.
So which
Yes.
which is really kind of how, I like to say it links into the third question I have for you is really around, since you're in the HR profession, right? Future proofing careers though, right? If someone wants to up their game, haha, up their game, all right, and remain indispensable in their field, right, or whichever area, function they're in, what is the most critical skill or mindset they need to develop today though?
Okay. I would probably refer to my own experience here. So I've come from an engineering background to HR now, and in between I've been in logistics for a while. So I took a journey of kind of identifying what my passions are, and really pursuing them. So I think through that journey, I often found myself, I did find myself at a particular period of time playing victim. All right. So
Mm,
so when I wasn't finding myself progressing, I probably blamed everyone else except
yep,
myself for
yep,
for
yep.
for not being there, right? And I was then exposed to growth mindset, and I think that really changed my life. Just embracing growth mindset, taking accountability of my own success, my own development. And I do that now a lot with people I coach, is trying to cultivate the growth mindset. So I think anyone who wants to up their game firstly needs to embrace the growth mindset, to believe that anything is possible and take accountability of their own destiny. And I also believe that, one of the things that can keep you going is to really find your niche, really develop that intensely, and evolve that along the way, right? So sharpen those skills, continue to get better at it, and also building adjacent skills to kind of help you through that. So as you have your core skills, how do you build adjacent skills that can continue help you to develop the core skills? And as I mentioned earlier, how do you do the right tools? How do you use the right tools to support you? So, for example, with AI now, how do you use AI to enable you to do better, to make life easier for you, or to enable you to do more and more impactful work? So, I think these are probably some of the elements that's really helpful. It has been helpful for me in future proofing my career, and I believe it will help many people as well.
Well, I think your whole notion centrally around the growth mindset is really, really important. I've seen, just like you over my career, how many people kind of play the victim, right? It's somebody else's fault because they're not moving ahead, or somebody's playing favorites, blah 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 blah. But they're not looking really at themselves and finding that niche, and as you say, right, making adjustments or keep working at it so that they become really, really good though. And these days with AI, it's amazing. I was doing I was just talking to somebody who is a techie, right? And he was telling me about a tool, and he says, "Okay, just give me your website, though, Stephen." I said, "Which one do you want?" He said, any one you have. He put it into this AI thing. He pressed the button here, and 10 seconds later, there was a 7-minute conversation between two people, right? Who are AI avatars that we couldn't even detect that they were AI people talking about me, right? Right? About things that I haven't even done yet, but it's either in the in on online or from our website, and I was totally blown away. But this is the kind of thing, right? You have to keep on top of things that are adjacent to your area of expertise so that you can leverage it going forward though. So having that growth
Yeah.
mindset, Velu, is really, really, really important though. I think so. So that really comes to this fourth question that I like to. So this whole notion of personal reinvention, right? Whether we want to reinvent or don't reinvent, I think there's no choice. So how can professionals reinvent themselves mid-career, especially the mid-career people, right? To stay ahead in an evolving industry, right? We talk about AI, we talk about semicon industry, where you guys are in any industry is evolving and is evolving fast. So what can people do, all right, to reinvent themselves, though, from your
Okay.
perspective?
So I think I'll tie it to a personal challenge that I had, and how that also
Sure,
translated
great.
into doing better at work as well. So I went through a personal challenge in the past, and through that process, I found myself always expecting someone else to change, or someone else
Mm.
to do things differently. And it was quite a journey, and I realized at the end of the day that it is what I do that's going to make a difference, right? Irrespective of what's happening outside of me, I think it's what I do that makes a difference. And I realized this, and I started asking myself this question: what can I do differently? And I started having that habit of asking that question about what can I do different. I kept asking myself those questions every time I faced a challenge. And applying the growth mindset and looking at any challenge as an opportunity, or any situation as an opportunity, I just kept started asking myself, what can I do differently? And this eventually became a habit. So I find that question very powerful: is what can I do differently, or what must I do differently in certain situation? And that triggers certain thought in me, certain level of accountability, certain elements of possibility of starting to embrace change, adapt, to seek opportunities, and embrace those opportunities. That has led me to personal inventions many times over. I would say, right? And every opportunity is for every to seek every opportunity, you got to reinvent yourself in some ways. It's sometimes small, sometimes big.
Well, I love that. It's so simple, right? What can I do differently? But actually, you can use the same question when you're coaching somebody. So, what can you do differently in this
Yeah.
situation?
Yes.
Or you help
Yes.
people because and that kind of spurs them a little bit to think about, how they can do something different. So it's I think that's the beauty about sometimes having just a very, very simple idea, but using it and making it, leveraging it for yourself. And the simple question of what can I do differently is really a great one that we can end on here. Velu, I can't say enough. You're talking about your acknowledgement of change that led to the unlearning, that led to the growth mindset, and led to this question called "What can I do differently?" is a brilliant way that people can up their game if they're planning to be in any of their careers. So, ladies and gentlemen, Hopefully you heard that. That was Vellu Mahadevan. He is the Country HR Director based in Penang, Malaysia for Micron Technology. Vellu, thank you very much for being on our podcast.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Pleasure being here.